Today on Clemson Football Live, we're talking about Clemson's nasty front seven, and we're getting started. It's a beautiful Tuesday, June the 25th. By the way, Merry Christmas 6 months in advance to all of my friends and family who know me very well. They know I like to do that periodically. I take the 25th of every month and just count down to Christmas. So, well, you can't sneak up on you and the wife going when she's like, oh, we need to buy Christmas. So anyway, Merry Christmas 6 months in advance. I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Even if you've been watching for a while, go just check and see if you've subscribed. It's the easiest and freest way to support the channel. Also, there's a join button below the video. Big John Sutton, he's already in here giving away tea recipes. So yeah, he's in here. Slim Shady Canes is in here, but it's good to see you, Slim Shady Canes. Big John is a member, so I appreciate you supporting the channel on a monthly basis. So let's dive right in. There has been a constant at Clemson during the Dabo Swinney era, and even before the Dabo Swinney era. Clemson has been known for its defensive players, and this year is absolutely no different. In fact, it's one of the reasons that I believe that we will win a lot more games than we will lose. Why? Because these guys are that good. Now, Clemson's front seven obviously has 7 members, but I'm going to be talking about more than 7 people who will be shuffling in because those starters have to take a break. So unfortunately, because these guys, they're playing a sport where, they lift weights all the time, work out all the time, only to hit the other guy faster and harder, people do get hurt, unfortunately. So we need to know who's behind the initial 7, but we need to take a look at them as a whole. Now, this year, Clemson loses Xavier Thomas after 6 years in college football. He had a lot of problems, but I am hoping that he will do well in the NFL. Of course, Rook is gone, Tyler Davis is gone, Jeremiah Trotter, he's gone, but never fear, Clemson's front 7 is here. That is the cheesiest thing I've said in quite a while, so let's dive right in and talk about them. Now, I'm going to start off with someone who was a true freshman last year, and this guy is just a beast. In fact, it just came out over the past week or so. He squatted over 700 pounds, if my memory serves me correct. 6'2", 315-pound Peter Woods. This guy's a true sophomore. The guy's ridiculous. He had 27 tackles last year. I do believe he had, 2.5 sacks, I believe. 2.5 sacks. Yes. Peter Woods had, no, he didn't have it. He didn't have any sacks last year. That was 2.5 tackles for a loss. But the guy is just one of those fellas you don't run at. If you do, and even if you try to get away from him, he can get you. And he's extremely powerful. I remember seeing him in the spring game in 2023. And I told my son, I was like, can you believe that just a few months ago, he was in high school? Yeah, he was like in flipping high school. It's ridiculous. The guy is just outrageous. He's extremely talented. He has the ability to come in and just wreak havoc on the opposition. No matter if the opposition has a good offensive line or not, this guy is just that guy. So Peter Woods is definitely a guy to keep your eyes on. Again, a true sophomore. It's just somebody else that you could go, wow. It gives you some hope while Clemson is trying to figure out other things within the organization. Let's move on to DeMonte Capehart. Last year, he had 16 tackles and 1 sack. He had 4 tackles for a loss. Now, DeMonte Capehart, he's a senior. He's 6'4", 295. He's a defensive tackle. This guy is someone who kind of flies under the radar when you have someone like TJ Parker or Peter Woods, or last year, being covered up by Tyler Davis or Rook being out there. This guy kind of flies behind the radar. But the thing is, he's getting lost because he's covered up by great talent, but that doesn't take away from his talent. So this is another guy that you're going to see a lot out of. You're going to really see him lay into the line and really wreak havoc in the interior of the offensive line between the guard and the center. You're going to see that happen a lot. That's going to clog up some running lanes for the opposition. Next up, another senior, another guy who got lost in the mix of, the Rooks, the Tyler Davises, and then the other players. Some of them I'll be talking about here in just a second. But is Peyton Page Sr. He's 6'4", 315 pounds. He has the height, he has the weight. This guy, it is just another guy. It's going to make it very difficult for our opposition to attack the interior of our line. And so it's going to force them to the outside. But when you look who's sitting on the outside, Peter Woods and TJ Parker, I'll talk about him in just a second. It's not that easy. It is not that easy. Let's talk about TJ Parker. He had 41 tackles, 5.5 sacks last year, 7 tackles for loss. He had 10 quarterback hurries. Guys, I mean, what more can you say about TJ Parker? What was he called? What was his nickname in high school? I should have looked this up before I came on here, but he was what, the quarterback killer? It was something grim like that, and I love the name. I'm going to hop in here. And say hello to a few people before I move any farther. Slim Shady Canes and Big John are having some fun. Rob Ellen, Charisse Armistead, Intelligent Savage 629. Good to see you, my friend. We got Akeem West. Watch out for Vic Burley. Yes, I'll be talking about him in just a second. Doc Snicklefritz, one of my favorite names. Cape Harlow is a monster, makes O-line looks like children. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Cohen Pope. The first game we gonna need the front seven to show up. Oh yeah. Charisse Armistead, why does Dabo Swinney pretend that the transfer portal doesn't exist? That's a whole other video, and let me tell you, I'm just going to leave it at there. I'm glad you're all in here. Hey, I hope everyone has subscribed. Also, if you want to join and support the channel on a monthly basis, there's a join button down there. It's really cheap. So, let's keep going. All right. So, let's dive back down here, talk about TJ Parker for just a second longer. TJ Parker is one of those guys that he's just a dominant force. You run away from him, he can run you down. You run towards him, he sheds the block. He gets to you. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal to have that type of athlete out there. 6'3", 255. So he's not really a thick guy, but he's not little. He's out there on the edge, and he's going to secure the edge. So TJ Parker, to have he and Woods together is just almost unfair. I'm going to move on to the linebackers, and then I'm going to swing back around to the players that we need to keep our eyes on. Of course, Barrett Carter returns for his senior season, and he really didn't have the season last year that he wanted. We remember him talking after that Duke loss. He was like, look, I was not in game shape. I ticked off a lot of people when I said what the guy was not in shape. And then a lot of people was like, well, game shape and everything. I agree. I agree with what their arguments was, and they are, right to a point. But this guy was like a preseason first round draft pick. Somehow Duke was in game shape, and we should all ask ourselves how that happened. And the Clemson Tigers, one of their stars, said he wasn't in game shape. But hey, teach their own. I'm not knocking Barrett Carter because he is a freak. He's part of that 2021 recruiting class. It was number 5 in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. That's his same recruiting class that brought in Jeremiah Trotter, Nate Wiggins, Will Shipley, Phil Maffa, and many, many more. In fact, he was tied with Tristan Lee as the top recruited player as far as like percentage overall, percentage ranking, and highest ranking recruit. I think they were both like a 98 or something like that. Something crazy like that. But Barrett Carter still had 67 tackles, 3.5 sacks last year, 6 tackles for loss. No, that was 4 tackles. No, it was 6 tackles for the loss, 6 pass breakups, 6 quarterback hurries, and 1 interception. So Barrett Carter comes back and he's like, look, I'm going to give myself a better chance at coming out and doing, what I can do to not only help the team, but to really help myself, right? So, let me see. So let's talk about another fantastic player who's going to be starting for the Tigers this year. And I'm going to go to Khalil Barnes. Now, Khalil Barnes is playing linebacker. He's he's kind of like a linebacker, kind of like a secondary member. But that's kind of how they have him. That's how they have him listed. He's 6 foot 195, so he's not like your true 6'3", 230-pound linebacker like Wade Wood is, or a 6'1", 230 like Barrett Carter. But Khalil Barnes came out last year, and because of injury across the board, this guy came out and he really put on a show. He did very well. By the way, he did very well in the spring game in 2023. So when I talk about, and I want to pause there, when I talk about the spring game can really tell you a lot about your upcoming season. And I've talked about the bad stuff that it actually produced for Clemson. And everybody gets all upset because, well, it's the truth, and it takes away their I don't know what it is. I don't know why you would want to run from the truth so bad, but anyway, to run away from it so hard. But there was also some good things that it proved. That Peter Woods was going to be incredible. He did great in that spring game, and Khalil Barnes did great in the spring game. And what did they do? They came out in their first season, and they played incredible. So Khalil Barnes, because of injuries and this, that, and the other, he came out and had 41 tackles. He had 1 sack. He had 6 pass breakups. He had 3 interceptions. And we can't forget the true freshman realizing that South Carolina, when they threw that pass and it hit the ground, it was a backwards pass. He picked it up, ran it back for a touchdown. That was the only touchdown of the game. But Khalil Barnes showed out through the years. Of course, right after that, he had the interception downfield. It was a very physical interception too. It wasn't just like it dropped in his hands. He had to go up and get it and then hold on to it as he hit the ground. So Khalil Barnes and his ability to come out and play and his agility, because he's not really a true linebacker, he's really a secondary member. But to have him out there roaming around, that is someone that is going to benefit when the other team is trying to get away, when the opposing offense is trying to get away from Peter Woods, and they're trying to get away from T.J. Parker. They're trying to get away from Barrett Carter. This is a guy that can slip out there into the flats, pick off an errant pass. Someone overlooks him, but he's so quick and shifty enough he slides out there. Or you can drop him in coverage on maybe like a wheel route on a running back, or he can cover a shifty slot receiver. So this is something that a lot of people overlooks, but I'm very excited to have Khalil Barnes here, and it makes me feel better. And I'm going to go into this in just a second. I don't want to go overboard here on other subjects, but let's go to Wade Wood. Wade Wood is a linebacker for Clemson. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. This guy's a junior. He came out, he's playing in that role last year with Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter. And in this year, he and Barrett Carter are really just running things, and they're bringing in guys like Khalil Barnes. We'll talk about Sammy Brown here in just a second. 6'2", 230 pound, the highest ranked player we signed last year, or last recruiting cycle. And this guy is just a good old fashioned linebacker. 31 tackles, 4 sacks. He had 2 quarterback hurries. And 2 tackles for loss. But he's someone there that's just been a good, solid player, good, solid linebacker. He's going to go out there, he's going to do his job, and he's going to jog back to the sideline because everybody around him is doing their job. Now, of course, I'm not talking about the secondary today. The secondary Even though young, I'm very excited to talk about them. I just don't want to. I just want to focus on the front seven because it's a very talented team. And let's pause there before I talk about some of the other players that are behind them. And there's a lot of players behind them. Won't really be able to go in depth here because I don't want to make this video just forever. But if you look at Clemson's defensive unit over the past 13 years, 14, 15 years at least, especially during the Dabo Swinney run, yeah, you might have had a few years that maybe they were not as dominant. Clemson's defense has been really dominant, and it's been one of the really good, consistent units, especially over the past 4 years where you have seen Clemson be inconsistent on the offensive side of the football. And a lot of that goes back to the majority of the Clemson coaching staff on the defensive side. Most of them are tenured. A lot of them has had different stops before they came to Clemson. And, people can talk about, well, Wes Goodwin was never a defensive coordinator before this, but if you look at the people that Wes Goodwin has been influenced by and he's worked with and the praise that these people has put on him, folks, he's actually quite different than some of our offensive hires who had never coached before, that maybe they were good athletes, or maybe they loved Clemson, or maybe they played at Clemson, or maybe, they were somebody who it just seemed promising. This guy, he actually has, you can pay attention to him. Wes's demeanor is very different than a lot of these other guys. And so my point in that is, even with him, there was something different about him. There was something different. It was more business. It was more, let's get down to the strategy. I'm not worried about regurgitating, what Clemson's all about and stats that really don't matter when it comes to football. He's all about getting down to business, and you can see that on the field. Obviously, guys like Nick Eason, Mike Reed, Rumpf. I mean, these guys can coach. These guys can coach, and so and you can see it. That's why you're seeing continuity on the defensive side of the football. That's why you're still seeing guys like Sammy Brown and Peter Woods and TJ Parker say, "Hey, I want to come play at Clemson." So don't be shocked when Clemson's defense comes out and plays very well. And also, I always like to say this: when I am criticizing Clemson, I always like to note that a lot of times I'm not criticizing the defense because there's very little to criticize. The defense, if you ever see our defense give up yardage, significant yardage or anything like that, it's because the offense has either put them in a bad position due to a turnover, or the offense continues to move the ball but not get the ball into the end zone, or they go on a string of 3 and outs, or maybe they convert through their first set of downs, but then they end up turning over the ball or having to punt, and they're just running the defense right back out there, and they get tired because they're human beings, no matter how well they train. So let's get to some of the players, and I'm probably going to miss some of these and some of the players that are behind them, but I'm just going to run over these names. AJ Hoffler. AJ Hoffler is a fantastic defensive end, 6'4", 250. Darian Mayo. This guy, he's highly recruited. Everybody liked him. Cade Danoff. Green, he's 6'4", 280. We have Vic Burley. Vic Burley, 6'4", 315. I want to say that he's had some physical issues. Hopefully he will get in and be able to be an incredible impact. Caden Story, Trey Williams, Jaheim Lawson. That's Shaq Lawson's little brother. Zaire Patterson. And then moving into the linebackers, we have Kobe McLeod. We talked about Sammy Brown. That's a duh statement. Sammy Brown, I'm not overlooking him. It's just, for me, everybody knows that Sammy Brown is there. And Sammy Brown, he and his hair are going to get their reps. And I fully expect him to come in and do an incredible job. Jamal Anderson, he had an incredible spring game. He had the pick six. To me, that pick six against Christopher Vizina, that was really incredible for several reasons. if you go back and watch that interception, he and Vizina were actually quite close to one another. So when you have a guy like Christopher Vizina who's throwing the ball at that velocity out in the flats that close to a player, normally what would happen is he'd throw the ball, it'd be an oh crap moment. The linebacker would see the ball coming, but he couldn't react fast enough because it's coming so quick. And there's the velocity of the ball coming towards you, and it would normally get batted up, maybe get picked off by one of your fellow defensive players, or just hitting your hands and you drop it really quick. Jamal Anderson actually intercepted that pass and took it to the house, and that's something that we should be extremely excited about as Clemson fans, because he had that ability and that foresight to catch the football, to catch it, and then take it to the house. He was not he wasn't it didn't catch him off guard. So some of the players that you're going to see on the defensive side of the ball, make sure that are new signees. I almost said new hires. That's crazy. Crazy. Sammy Brown, I mentioned him just a second ago. We have Darian Mayo, I mentioned him just a second ago. Champ Thompson, Heaven Brown Schuler. These are some good, solid football players who are coming in to play for Clemson, and it gives us more depth. Drew Woodaz, Wade's younger brother, so he's coming in to play for the Tigers. Now, as I'm checking the comment section, I'm gonna go through the comment section real quick. You can see my old buddy SEC dog in here. Let me see. Dean Wilson's in here. Got Zach Horseman in here. We got Big Reds in here. Still Gamble, my old buddy. We have the three of the best returning corner safety. Still Gamble is a member. You see that symbol beside Still Gamble's name. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Let me see. WBTDX, good to see you. Big John. Cole Turner. Hey, that's Ruby Ridge's joke. We both know Ruby Ridge is going to leave a comment about Cole Turner in here. For anyone who's watching, you have no clue about the Cole Turner joke. We're not making fun of Cole Turner. It's just Ruby Ridge makes a joke almost every video about how when the media was talking to Dabo last year about how well some of the wide receivers were playing, namely Tyler Brown comes out of nowhere. You know, he's a last-minute offer, three-star player out of local Greenville, South Carolina, and he comes on, he puts on a clinic. So they're talking about him, and what is Dabo talking about? Well, I tell you, Cole Turner, and it's like, Cole's hurt, you know, wait till we get Cole back. We can get Cole back, and it's like, I'm not saying Cole's a bad athlete, not picking at Cole, but it's like the overcompensation. It's just, anyway. So that's the joke, and I can't wait for Ruby Ridge to throw that in there. Big John is, can Cole Turner play defense? We would be the number one defense in the country, according to Swinney, if that's the case. But all right, let's talk about a couple of things here, and this is kind of my closing thoughts. 35 of you in here. I hope you've had a great day so far. I hope you'll subscribe if you hadn't. Thumbs up, definitely. And if you want to support the channel on a monthly basis, please do that. It's $3 or $5. I do appreciate it. So what are kind of the closing thoughts on this? Notice I didn't talk about the secondary. Folks, I'm really not worried about the secondary. They are young, and they're going to have some oh crap moments. But they recruited really well there this year. In fact, I think we have too many DBs. I'm not kidding, but hey, if they all come in and play great, that's wonderful. Tavoy Fagan had a great spring game. So once again, another guy, much like Khalil Barnes, does he come out when he's given a chance? He come out and you know do what those guys did? Maybe so. I don't know. But let's talk about how this front seven plays into Clemson's season. Now, folks, I made a video last week where I said Maffa equals 9 wins. And some people didn't take that. They did not take that very well. They thought that was demoralizing. And I responded, hey, people misunderstand me, and sometimes maybe I don't explain myself well enough. What I'm saying is that Phil Maffa is good enough to win 9 out of the 12 games that we'll play this year, meaning his ability versus the opposing defense. And I had Kenton Gibbs a couple of weeks ago from NC State. He was a former NC State football player. He was praising Moffitt. He was like, he's one of these guys at 6'1", 230 that you think, oh, as the game goes on, we wear him down. And it's like you get into the third quarter and it's like, what's wrong with this guy? He's not wearing down. And he has another gear. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he ain't slow. I am saying that Phil Moffitt is good enough to win 9 out of 12 games versus the opponents that we play. He can do it. It's those other remaining 3 games where we're going to need the whole effort from the rest of the offensive team. Now, part of that said, this defense, even though they're young, this defense has the talent and they have the coaching to come out and win 9 or 10 games this year without the offense performing as a whole. What do I mean? Again, Maffa can win a lot of these games. As long as he's healthy, he can win a lot of these games versus the teams we're playing. 9 out of the 12 is what I'm saying. Why? Because if Wake Forest stacks the box, Moffitt can still run through them or hit a gap. He has great field vision. Turn that around on the defensive side of the ball. Can you see Virginia Tech moving the ball on this front seven? Can you see Stanford being successful against this front seven? Can you see Appalachian State? No, they're not a bad football team, by the way. I mean, take all the lore of Appalachian State with meeting Michigan 2 years ago, beating A&M at A&M. I'm talking about the current team. They're a good football team. They've got a good team, and they're favored to win their conference this year. And I know it's a group of 5 conference. But still, Moffitt can run against them. Moffitt can run against the Gamecocks. Unless something has changed with their defensive front seven, he can run all over them. He can run all over a lot of the teams that we will play this season. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at our schedule. He can have a field day against Stanford, Wake Forest, Virginia. Louisville will test him, but I believe we can do that. Pittsburgh, the Citadel. What I am saying, turn that around. Can those teams play at free will, have free range against this defensive front seven? No. I don't see it. Could I be wrong? Sure. Sure, I could be wrong. But I just don't see it. So when I say that Phil Maffa or this defensive unit could win 9 games just between Maffa and the defensive unit, I really mean that. I would even go on to say that if NC State has some issues playing against our defense, maybe our defense hits them a little harder than what they thought. Man, I love Grayson McCall. I wish that we would have brought him in at Clemson. We don't believe in going out and getting quarterbacks out of the transfer portal, but I believe that had we went out and picked him up, that would have been good for Clemson, but he's playing for NC State. The problem with McCall, and I say this, I hope nothing happens to him. He is injury prone. What happens if Clemson goes out there and pops him around a couple of times and he starts to get off kilter? Maybe our front seven takes the run away. It's in Death Valley, and NC State hasn't beat Clemson in Death Valley since 2002 when Phillip Rivers was there. I can see this Clemson team could actually win 10 games. They could, between the defense and Maffa. The question is, with Georgia, Florida State, and NC State, will the other part of the offense show up? Will they show up? And that's what I'm meaning when I talk about Maffa. And with this defense right here can win 10 games, almost 10 games by itself. Meaning the offense could go out there and kind of fart around and they could hang in it. You don't want to win games like that because eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. You're going to play around way too much, and then somebody's going to hit a hot streak on offense, and maybe you catch some of those young players on the defense, maybe one game, maybe not having the best performance of their life, and the offense is not producing, that's how you can see an 8-4 season or a 9-3 season, because the offense as a whole is not supporting Moffitt and the defense. That's what I'm trying to clear up. But we should be pleasantly, we should feel good about Moffitt and the defense as a whole and the defensive coaching, right? That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Where I step back and say I don't see us beating Georgia, and that NC State and Florida State game is going to be very questionable. There might be one sneaky game there in the rest of those games, It's because of the rest of the offense. It's because of the questions of the offensive coaching. It's the questions of, people saying, well, Garrett Riley was running things last year. He just had to simplify his offense. So you mean to tell me that they did have better athletes at TCU than at Clemson University? Because that's not what I was told when he was on his way at Clemson. So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of questions. But anyway, I hope that I clear myself up. Folks, leave your comment below and let me know what you think. Leave the comment below. Slim Shady Kane says Clemson defense isn't what it was 3 or 4 years ago. You're going to go 8-4 tops. Let me see. App State is tricky for us, but not as tricky as the Citadel is for USC. That's hilarious. By the same logic, at South Carolina's spiraling growth isn't linear, especially when overhauling coaching rooms. It's good to see everybody in here nice and arguing. WB2DX says Moffitt equals 10 wins. I went with 9, but we will see. 9 or 10. It's interesting. Leave your comment below. Folks, hope you will subscribe. If you want to support the channel, the join button's below. It's either $3 or $5. You choose. Big John, Still Gamble, a bunch of people, they've already done it. And they're like, man, I don't even notice it coming out of my bank account. It's that little. I do appreciate it. I do have a show tonight, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. I have Eric Boggs from the Ohio Podcast. We're going to talk Ohio State football. You're like, why are you doing this? Well, folks, very few of people who's watching this video is going to get to this point. But for those of you who stuck around, I'm going to tell you why. Clemson needs to get out of its own ecosystem. Clemson needs to get out of its own little world and see what these other schools are doing. These big bad schools that a lot of us hate so much. Now, not me. I'm not a big fan of a lot of schools, but I do step back and go, what are they doing well? I'm not a Georgia fan at all. But Georgia has something different going on. Kirby's running a whole different team than what's going on in Clemson, South Carolina. And here's the thing. I know Ryan Day hasn't won a national championship, and he's had his problems with Michigan. Ryan Day has not ruined Ohio State football. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Ryan Day is still a very big player in the college football ranks, especially with the 12-team expansion. Unless Ohio State falls apart, they're almost guaranteed a playoff spot. So they're very difficult to recruit against. They're also using the portal. Also, remember this, with Clemson not having a presence in the portal, there's players that are playing at other schools that if Clemson were using the portal and really was invested in it and went beyond just saying, well, hey, we like them, but they didn't like us. Well, you don't treat high school recruiting like that. You actually go after a lot of recruits because some people aren't going to like you. What we need to understand as Clemson fans is there are players who could be playing at Clemson, but because Clemson's not in the market in the transfer portal, they're now playing against us. So us not being in the market's not only hurting us that we're not getting these players, it's also hurting us because, well, there's players that could be playing at Clemson that's now playing against us. It's more of a piece of the pie to go around to Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. So we have to remember that there's more than just that we don't like the whole NIL portal thing going on. It's hurting us in more than one way. So anyway, I'm going to talk to Eric Boggs about that and about the whole Ohio State world. What's going on? What's their thoughts? They lost McCord to Syracuse. What's going on here? But anyway, it'll be good to have Eric on here. Folks, you take care of yourself. And as always, go Tigers.